Welcome to footballgameplan.com, where football makes sense. I'm Emery Hunt, the czar of the playbook. Bring you our 2014 midseason mock draft. Now, before we jump into this mock draft, let's take a look at some of the mock draft rules moving forward. Now, here are the mock draft rules. Number one, the picks are based off as if I were the GM, meaning who I would rather see on the team, who I would select if I were the GM of that football team. Number two, the picks are also based off need and not best player available. And three, picks are based off my own ranking of the prospects. So you may see players that may not go here in the draft, but who I rate high in this first round. And number four, picks do not take into account free agency. Don't try to outthink the process. And five, it's only a midseason mock draft. Calm down and enjoy. The Jaguars land the best quarterback prospect in the country in Teddy Bridgewater out of Louisville. He's as clean a prospect as Andrew Luck, and in my opinion, carries a similar grade. The only thing Luck has over Bridgewater would be athleticism and size, but Bridgewater carries the better arm talent, i.e. velocity on his throws and the accuracy, short, intermediate, and also deep. And from the neck up, there shouldn't be any questions about his regular IQ or his football IQ. The only critique I see would be that he's a ball patter, and that's a habit that he's going to have to break at the next level. And if you hear any outlandish or overly critical analysis about his game, I'd advise you to stop listening to that person. This is a kid that's elite. It is tough for the Buccaneers right here at number 2 to pass on Jadeveon Clowney. Here's a guy at 6'5", 270. I think he's more Lawrence Taylor than he is Bruce Smith. So you can get creative with how you utilize him in your defense, and he will instantly upgrade the athleticism on that Buccaneer defensive front. The Giants can finally get a stud at the second level of their defense with Anthony Barr, outside linebacker from UCLA, 6'4", 250-pound senior whose best football is ahead of him. Here's a guy that can drop back in coverage very well. You can put his hand in the dirt on third downs, and is that type of flexibility and athleticism that makes you special defensively. That's why I love the pick of Barr for the Giants. I know the Vikings signed Greg Jennings last year. I know they still have Jerome Simpson on the roster. I even know that they traded back into the first round for Cordero Patterson out of Tennessee. But here's why Clemson's Sammy Watkins makes a lot of sense. Number one, Jerome Simpson as your number 2 wide receiver gives you nothing, and I also think it's time to move on from him. Number two, it would also allow Patterson to slide into a more comfortable number 2 or number 3 role, giving the Vikings a potent 3 wide receiver, 1 tight end, 1 back set. I also believe number 3, I expect Josh Freeman to play a lot better than what we saw Monday night moving forward, making them feel more comfortable or comfortable enough to not take a quarterback here, maybe later, but not here. And why not add another dynamic playmaker like Watkins, who's similar to Patterson and what he can do with the football in his hands. Out of the 3 redshirt sophomore quarterbacks everyone's talking about, Johnny Manziel, Marcus Mariota, Brett Hundley, I believe Manziel is the more pro-ready of the 3. Why? Because he's seen more defensively. And what you saw last year is exactly what you're seeing this year. People want to knock his passing skills. This is a guy that can throw the football. And I also believe he's an ideal fit for the zone blocking scheme of the Houston Texans. You want a mobile guy coming off that play action. You want a guy that has played in spread offenses in this offense, so I think Manziel will be a perfect fit for what the Texans want to do offensively. I actually don't think Sam Bradford is a problem out there in St. Louis. I actually think he's done very well. I think the offensive line is a bigger issue. That's why they can't run the football. So I think Jake Matthews has to be the selection, the first selection of their 2 first-round picks in next year's draft. The Raiders have to continue to stockpile weapons around their franchise quarterback Terrell Pryor. The receivers, in my opinion, are serviceable enough to be effective, but what's really lacking, in my opinion, is a legit threat in the backfield. That's why I'd select DeAnthony Thomas out of Oregon. You want to ignore those that say he should be a receiver because they obviously don't know football. Have you ever seen him get off bump press? No. Can he run the route tree? Probably not as good as receivers that have played the position their entire lives, so that entire premise doesn't make sense. What makes sense is the fact that this is a guy that can run the football well inside, quietly, and outside. And he is a legit threat to score from anywhere on the field. So why would you make it hard for him by having him run routes in hopes that he gets the football when you could just turn around and hand it to him in the backfield and watch him work? You want to also ignore those that question his size. Warwick Dunn was 5'9", 178 pounds, and rushed for over 10,000 yards in his NFL career. So that kills that weak argument as well. Darren McFadden can't stay healthy, so the Raiders have to address a running back position, and a black mamba would find a home in the black hole. The Falcons play multiple defense, and I think that's why Khalil Mack makes a lot of sense. They don't need defensive line help. They need help at the second level, and I think this would be an ideal pick. Here's a guy that has tremendous closing speed in a running game and also chasing down quarterbacks. You can get creative. He can put his hand in the dirt. He can play an outside edge rusher in a 3-4 look, so you can get creative with this guy in your defense, which is why I think he would be a super pick for the Falcons at number 8. The Steelers have to start getting younger along their defensive line, and Louis Nix III out of Notre Dame, 6'2", 345-pound defensive tackle, would be an ideal fit. This is a guy that reminds me a lot of Casey Hampton, who was a 5-time Pro Bowler in this same defense. Like I said earlier, the Rams' offensive line is more of an issue than a quarterback play, and yes, they do have Barrett Jones on the roster. He's taking the year off, getting healthy, but he can play guard or center. Why not double down and get one of the best guards in the country in Cyril Richardson out of Baylor? The Cleveland Browns need a legit breakaway threat at the running back position. That's why Lake Seastrunk makes a lot of sense right here at number 11. Here's a guy that reminds me a lot of Napoleon Kaufman that played for the Raiders back in the day. He has that type of breakaway speed. All he needs is a crease. He's going to take it to the house. Continuing to add valuable weapons around a young quarterback is essential for his success, which is why I believe the Bills have to go with Austin Seferian-Jenkins, 6'6", 276 pounds out of Washington. Reminds me a lot of a guy that plays down in New Orleans in Jimmy Graham. One of the rare occasions where the former college coach actually selects one of his players in the draft, but this is a huge need for the Philadelphia Eagles, the cornerback position. Ifo Ekpe-Olomo makes a lot of sense. A very active corner, not only in the running game, but also in pass coverage, always around the football, and definitely has the hands to make a play on it, pick it off, and also take it the distance. One of the better tight ends in the country is Eric Ebron out of North Carolina. Does a great job in the running game, but also is an excellent downfield threat in the passing game. Would also allow Delaney Walker to be more of that H-back role. Sometimes you utilize him as a fullback, but when you have Ebron and Walker on the field at the same time, you're only going to get better offensively. Do I believe Jeff Matthews will be selected here? Probably not. Do I believe he's better than other senior quarterback prospects in this draft? Absolutely. If you haven't seen him play, you're missing a real treat of a player. Reminds me physically of Joe Flacco with much better accuracy coming out of college. He can also move very well for a guy his size. I believe he'd be an ideal fit for Bruce Arians and that Cardinals offense. And before the swarms of people come in to try to knock his level of competition, the throws he's making here will be the same throws he'd make in the SEC, Pac-12, or NFC West. And there's a reason why Matthews is ranked as our 11th best quarterback prospect in last year's preseason NFL draft rankings, and the #1 senior quarterback in this year's preseason NFL draft rankings. Is because this kid can flat out play and has first-round talent. The Ravens need a #1 option at wide receiver, and I think Mike Evans can give them that. 6'5", 225, reminds me a lot of Vincent Jackson. Two things you look for when you're scouting wide receivers. Number 1, can he catch the football? And 2, can he make the contested catch? Those are the two most important things. Everything else you can work on. I think that's why he makes a lot of sense to ignore his speed. Look at his production. Look how he catches the football. Look how he makes contested catches. And that's what you want in a wideout, which is why I think he makes a lot of sense for Baltimore here at number 16. To say the Dolphins need help along their offensive line would be an understatement, which is why I believe James Hurst out of North Carolina makes a lot of sense here. This is a guy that I believe is the best tackle prospect in the country, can run block very well, does a great job in pass pro. You saw him do a fabulous job versus Jadeveon Clowney. So I think this is not only making sense for the Dolphins, but it's also protecting their investment in Ryan Tannehill. One of the more dynamic receivers in the country is Odell Beckham out of LSU, 5'11", 195. Reminds me a lot of Victor Cruz, and I think he'll do a great job in that Panthers offense with Cam Newton, a guy that can help him out as a returner and also can help them out as a split or a flanker. So they can get creative, move him around the formation, and he'll pay big dividends for that offense, something that they sorely need. A guy opposite of Steve Smith that's a dynamic player. I think that's why Beckham makes a lot of sense for this Panthers offense here at number 18. I still feel as though the Bears need free safety help. Chris Conte is a solid player, but I think Clinton Dix will give them more flexibility in their defense, a guy that can definitely eliminate mistakes on the back end. The Jets need offensive playmakers at the receiver position, tight end position, as well as in the backfield, but I think they grab the best hands in college football in Jarvis Landry out of LSU, 6 feet, 195 pounds. This is a guy that reminds me a lot of Anquan Bolden, not as fast, but definitely will catch anything thrown his way. I think this will instantly upgrade the passing game for the Jets. I'm a big fan of defensive tackle Anthony Johnson out of LSU. Here's a guy that's routinely double teamed each and every Saturday, and when he's not double teamed, he's whipping the guard one-on-one. So in my opinion, he makes an ideal 1-tech as well as a 3-tech that will fit perfectly in that 4-3 defensive front for Monty Kiffin. The Lions get better in the secondary, in particular the cornerback position with Jason Verrett out of TCU. Ignore his size, 5'10", 178. He's one of the more physically tough corners in college football. A guy that can play man press, he can play off man, he can play zone. He has the ball skills that you want. He also has the intellect and the instinct. So I think that right there makes him an ideal fit for what the Lions want to do in the secondary. And although he's having an off year, you can't overly critique a guy like Bradley Roby, 5'11", 195 pounds, still one of the better cornerback prospects in the country. One of these rare corners that plays the run very well, also is an excellent blitzer coming off the edge, and still has the man-to-man coverage skills that you want, and also does a great job of finding the ball. Just like Jason Verrett, one of the physically tough corners in the country, and this would be an ideal fit for San Diego. We know they need help in the secondary, so getting Roby here at pick 23 makes a lot of sense. I believe A.J. Hawk is a liability as an inside backer for the Green Bay Packers, so I think C.J. Mosley would be an ideal fit for this defense. Here's a guy that can play an outside role. He can also play on the inside. I think having him as an inside linebacker would be an ideal fit, making him a factor versus the run, but also has the skills, the intellect, the awareness to drop back and make plays in the passing game. So I think C.J. Mosley would be an ideal fit for Green Bay at pick 24. Derek Carr, not Taj Boyd or Zach Mettenberger, would be an ideal fit in Chudzinski's and North Turner's offense. I like the way he can throw the football on the move and doesn't lose velocity or accuracy when he's throwing on the run. Now, I've seen the improvement in his mechanics and his pocket toughness this season. Those were two big question marks of mine coming into this year. And most importantly, he doesn't hold on to the football as long as the other two prospects I mentioned. That's key. So I love his skill set and the fit in his offense. I think he'll be an ideal selection for the Browns. Some question his want-to, some question his motor, but you can't question his talent. Rashid Hageman is one of the best defensive tackle prospects in the country coming out of Minnesota, 6'6", 311, a guy that tends to play high at times. He's going to have to play with better pad level, but I believe Bill Belichick will get the most out of him. It will be an ideal fit for that Patriots defense. Talk about a tremendous athlete. Look at Luchase Purifoy out of Florida, a guy that has played on the offensive side of football as a receiver, so you know he has the ball skills, but also has the athleticism to line up in the slot and match up one-on-one versus wide receivers, are also on the field side because he has the speed to turn and run and also can find the football. So I think the Bengals have to find a way to get younger and more athletic at the corner, and this would be an ideal fit for that outstanding defense. I believe LaMarcus Joyner is one of the more versatile defenders in college football, a guy that can play strong safety. He even can line him up at free safety in the pinch. He played boundary corner. He can also play on the field side. He always ends up with the football in his hands, and I think that type of versatility and playmaking ability makes him an ideal fit in the 49ers defense. The Saints continue to add talent to Rob Ryan's 3-4 defense, and the reason why you add a guy like Vic Beasley is because of the fact that the Saints are multiple in their approach. Sometimes you may see 3-4, 4-3, 3-3-5, so you can get creative in how you utilize Vic Beasley, who can really bring it off the edge. I believe the Broncos will look to improve their interior defensive line with Will Sutton, 6 feet, 305 pounds. He's one of the more productive players right now in the Pac-12, does a great job versus the run, but has that quickness, that burst off the snap to get pressure on the quarterback versus the pass. I think this would be an ideal fit for a defense that loves to get after the quarterback. Front side pressure has killed the Seattle Seahawks this season, which is why I think they have to address that this year in the draft. Antonio Richardson, one of the best tackles in the country, number 74 here in the video. He's a left tackle, but I think he can flip to the right side, doesn't matter. And you won't lose anything in run blocking, but you will gain a lot in pass pro, and that's vital for the Seahawks offense to flourish. Marquise Lee out of USC would be an ideal fit for this Chiefs offense, giving them something that they don't have right now, a legit game breaker on the outside. Would also remind Andy Reid of a guy that he had back in Philadelphia in Jeremy Maclin. I do believe Lee is a better prospect than Maclin, so you get a lot more with a guy that's 6 feet, 195 pounds that can also help you out as a returner. And since the Redskins or the Colts don't have first-round picks, here are their selections for round 2. The Redskins have to start adding wide receiving weapons around Robert Griffin III, and I believe Jordan Matthews at 6'3", 205, a guy that can take a short pass a long ways, would be an ideal fit. Not only can he run after the catch, but he has tremendous hands and can make the contested catch. That's what you want in that offense. I believe this would be an ideal fit for the Redskins. The Colts have to do a better job of protecting Andrew Luck in the pocket, and you protect him inside out. So guard play is vital, which is why I think not only would Gabe Jackson be an ideal fit, but will be a huge steal if they're able to get him in the second round.